Alexa, turn Eric's office to white.
Okay.
Alexa, turn brightness down to 15%.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to our Valentine's Day live stream. I really appreciate you spending some time with me tonight on a Monday evening. I know it's a couple days before Valentine's Day, but I wanted to come in here and just like I did over Christmas, I want to come in and be able to give you some guidance as you navigate yet another holiday. And so if you're coming in to the chat, please go ahead and type in the chat. Tell me where you're from. Where are you calling in from, dialing in from, watching from tonight? And if you have any questions to start off with, please go ahead and post those in the chat too. I'd love to know who you are and where you're calling in from, especially. But yeah, so we're going to spend the next few minutes, next hour, kind of talking and coming together, holding space for each other, because I know how difficult it can be for to navigate any holiday. And Valentine's Day is tough because, right, love, and I know that the theme is all about love never dies, but we have a hard time with this when we're grieving. I just went through the 10-year anniversary of losing my daughter Zoe, not even 2 weeks ago. And I have to tell you that when you hit a milestone of like 10 years, there's something that's very profound about that milestone. It's 10 years has taken forever to get here, and yet it feels like it's just yesterday. And the reason being is that I still love Zoe as much as I did the day that she was born, and yet it doesn't make it any easier. And so, hey, Paula, welcome. Paula's coming in from Cleveland, and Liz Snow is coming in from Florida. Excellent. Glad you guys are here. So, if you're just joining us for the chat, please tell us in the chat where you're from. And if you have any questions, please post that. But as you guys are doing that, I'm going to just share a little bit about, the first Valentine's Day after I lost Zoe. So, Zoe died on January 25th of 2014. And obviously, it was not expected. It was very sudden. She took her life, unfortunately. And the next week was just a blur, going through all the services, trying to figure out, obviously, all of the coordinating everything, from the reception dinner afterwards to who's coming in from family and friends. And meanwhile, you're trying to navigate all of your emotions. And all the while, you're missing your loved one. In this case, I was missing Zoe very much. We all were. It wasn't just me. And so we get through the services that following week. And then 2 weeks later, it's Valentine's Day. And my stepdaughter, Zoe's older sister, Arminda, joined us and joined me, actually. And we went over to the cemetery, and we're standing there over this fresh spot in the ground, knowing that, Zoe's vessel was 6 feet below us. And we both just started crying. We just could not believe what we were having to navigate. It didn't seem possible. It didn't seem real. And we just kind of stood there in disbelief. We stopped at a florist and bought Zoe a single red rose, and we placed it at her resting spot. And we just stood there probably for about a half an hour, 45 minutes, and just we wanted everything to change, right? We wanted it to go back to the way that it was. And obviously, we couldn't do that. But there was something very profound about being in that spot on that day. It was something that's kind of hard to explain. I'll do my best to articulate it, but What we felt was love. We felt Zoe's presence. We were just missing her so very much, as I'm sure all of you are missing your loved ones. And so it was very challenging for us to try to navigate that day. And it was the very first holiday after losing Zoe. Now, as you know, navigating the holidays and other anniversary dates, there are always challenges with that. And here's the one thing that I know 10 years after uh, losing Zoe, and it's this, is that love never dies. Like I said earlier, I love Zoe as much as I did the day she was born. She's my daughter. Now, for those of us who are grieving and mourning the loss of a spouse or a sibling or a parent, this day can still be difficult to navigate because it's supposed to be a time when we are closer to each other. Um, it's a time when maybe the last Valentine's Day that you spent with your loved one, it was very nice, and you were just so grateful that they were there. Maybe you were spending that time with your child, and now this year they're not going to be here. And so I'd like to just kind of dive into ways that we can move through this next couple of days so that you still feel like you're doing everything you can to make it to the next day, if not the next hour, as you're moving through this. And so I appreciate that everybody's in here. If you're just joining us, please put in the chat your questions and I'll be glad to answer those for you. I'm on here from 7:30 Eastern time till 8:30 tonight. This is just an open forum, and I did a couple of these over Christmas, and there was wonderful responses in here, wonderful questions. And but I know that everybody's just trying to make it through, and so every holiday is a challenge. Hey, Marianne, welcome from Phoenix. Welcome. And yeah, everybody, we're just trying to make it through every single day, sometimes again the next hour. And sometimes that presents challenges for us. Um, but, and it's hard sometimes, I believe. And tell me this, agree with me, right? Yes, if you agree with me in the chat, that even though there is, we know we love our loved one, we know we miss them, it's very hard to try to find and be peaceful with that love when there's so much grief in your life right now. If that resonates with you, please type yes in the chat, because I'm sure that if you're feeling it, I'm feeling it, because this is the universality of grief, right? It's everybody's experience is different, and yet there are similarities, and we can be there. Thank you guys for confirming that. But yes, it's so challenging when we are trying to navigate our grief, and yet we have these holidays where love is supposed to be present, and it's still there. I do want to let you know that it is still there. It is never going to go away. You're never going to forget your loved one. There is a early on in your grief process. It's very normal to feel this way too. There are times when you may look at a picture, or you may go into your person's room, you may open their closet, you may do anything, grab their phone, anything that reminds you of them. And you are wondering, one, am I gonna is this am I at some point going to forget who they are? Am I going to forget everything about them? Are they just going to become a distant memory? I can tell you wholeheartedly that that will never be the case. There are so many details about Zoe's life that I remember vividly. And imagine, she was here for 15 years. If you were married and your spouse isn't here today, which again, I'm so sorry, and I appreciate that you're here. But if you were together with them for 30 plus years or 20 years, that's a lot of time to be with somebody. There's wonderful, wonderful moments and memories that you have of your relationship. And of course, it's a relationship. Not everything was perfect, but you're going to start to remember more of those wonderful times than the domination of the times that haven't been so great, especially in your grief. So we go through this process of grief because we need to navigate our days. We need to find ways to move through this brain fog that overtakes us, and all the while it's so hard to feel sometimes anything. There's numbness there. And with that numbness brings this feeling that you're going to forget your loved one somehow. Well, I'm not feeling anything. So that just means that they're not going to be, or I'm going to forget them eventually. Um, this is the grief that you're feeling right now, that intense grief of missing your loved one is not going to last forever. Everybody's different in the way they move through their grief, but there are better days ahead. And so, well, I'm going to go ahead and just turn some attention over to the chat because there's a couple of questions that are coming in and I want to get to those. But as we're talking tonight, as we're communicating back and forth, and I know this is a broadcast, right? This is a live stream, but I do feel like this is very much an interactive process, and I do appreciate your questions. I do appreciate you guys taking time out of your evening to spend, to try to navigate these next few days. But so Paula writes, my granddaughter Zoe died at 4 days old in May of 2023 due to a heart defect. I am surprised at how each holiday hits me hard in my grief. I never had the opportunity to spend any holidays with her. And Paul, I'm so very sorry for the loss of your granddaughter. I know, and I, parent to parent, in this case, grandparent, I know that there is a lot of emptiness right now. And as we move through these holidays, this is still very fresh for you. You're about 7 months into this journey, 8 months into this journey after losing your granddaughter. And so when I'm thinking about these types of early on, these journeys early on, and helping to figure out ways to navigate and move through them, not to move through it to get away from the love, but to actually get closer to people that we do love. This is something I'd like to share with you, Paula, and that is that when we have these moments, when we feel like we can't change the past, we can't go back as much as we want to turn the clock back. We have all these questions of why didn't they detect the heart defect? Why didn't anybody, or maybe they did know about the heart defect, but why didn't anybody do anything about it? Why? Like all these questions that come up, which cause us to spend our time in the past. That's very depressing when we do that. I do that all the time. I think about things that I should have done differently or could have done differently with Zoe. But I can't change that. And when I think about that, I get stuck there and it makes me I feel depressed, if that makes sense. I feel down. And then when I worry about the future, that is something that I can't control. The only thing that I can control is this moment right here. And what I can do in this moment right now, right here. So for you, Paula, maybe spending some time with your child. I don't know if it was your daughter or son who had Zoe. Beautiful name, by the way. Um, and by the way, the meaning Zoe. This is Greek. It's not swim. It's Zoe. The name Zoe means life in Greek, by the way. So hopefully, if you didn't know that, hopefully you do now. So thank you, Paul. It's your daughter. Maybe connecting with your daughter and spending some time with her, quality mother-daughter time, because she's certainly missing that with her daughter too. And nobody's doing anything wrong here. You're simply moving through this as best that you can. I when I went back to work after I lost Zoe, one of the I was working with at a telehealth company, and we had some doctors who were medically on our board. They were board members, and one of them went out a few weeks after I lost Zoe to have her baby. She went to the hospital and she lost her baby during childbirth. And when she came back to work a few months later, I happened to see her. I heard what had happened and I saw her, and she was just finishing up a meeting. And I don't know what came over me, but I went into this conference room where she was at and I said, "I'm so very sorry to hear about your daughter." And we just sat there and we just talked for the next 3 hours. We both had meetings, but it didn't matter. It became a human connection that we could relate to each other on. We actually deepened our friendship in that one single conversation. And so the reason I'm sharing that with you, Paula, is that I don't know how close you are with your daughter. Um, and I love that you have her name tattooed on your arm too. I love it. Yeah, there's something about that. But for your daughter to, as much as possible, be closer to her um, in these early years, months and years after losing her daughter Zoe, because it's going to mean the world to her and you in the future that you guys did that, that you guys, if there's uncomfortability, if there's any tension, anything like that. Again, I have no idea the relationship, but um, definitely spending more time with her can deepen your relationship, and you will amplify the love, and you both will feel that for your granddaughter, and she will know that there's a deep connection there. So um, I'm sending you a lot of love. I'm sending everybody on this call a lot of love because I know it's not easy. If you're just joining us, please tell me in the chat where you're calling in from and or dialing in from, and I'll be glad to and ask the questions in the chat. I'm just kind of moving through the chat here, so I hope that helps some, Paula. I know this isn't easy, but absolutely, and I'm going to say it again: love never dies. It's just covered up right now with there's underneath a lot of layers of the grief that it's under right now, but it will appear, it will come out. It's way stronger than the grief that you're feeling right now. So Marianne writes, what is making it hard this week with my husband and I finally met in person? It's not about the chocolate or hearts. It's way deeper than that. Wednesday feels worse than Christmas. Oh, so it is. This is the day that you got Marianne. This is the day that you guys actually met in person. Um, and thank you. So Diane's calling in from New Zealand. Well, welcome. Um, so Marianne, if you could put in the chat, tell me a little bit more about this. You say, I believe this is what you're saying is that you met your husband in person on Valentine's Day, which can make it even harder if that is the case. Why? Because there's such significance with that date. So I remember many years ago, this was in the early 90s. I'm dating myself here, but I was living in Memphis, Tennessee in the early 90s. And I remember watching this story where um, it was very inspiring because this woman who she had had a serious accident in her life. And it was a very traumatic accident for her. And every year on that anniversary, every time that the day was approaching, she said she stayed in her bed with her curtains drawn. She didn't get out of bed because all she needed to do was move through that day. And I don't know how many years went by before she ultimately decided that that wasn't going to be the narrative that she was going to be telling herself anymore, that she had to stay isolated and away from everybody else because that day hurt so much for her. And it's very possible that I don't have the details of the story. I think she lost some other family members that day too. But she decided to make a change. One year, she was approaching that holiday or that anniversary date, and she said, "I'm going to do something different." She went skydiving. She went skydiving. And here's why that was so impactful for me almost 30 years ago. Again, I'm dating myself here. Um, she rewrote the narrative about how that day was going to go for her moving forward. And so for you, Marianne, I know that if Wednesday is going to be difficult for you, I don't know how long it's been since you lost your husband, and if it's the first anniversary or first anniversary date of you guys meeting. um, it's going to take some time to move through this. It's the firsts, all the firsts are always really challenging. However, you're here. Obviously, you love your husband. That love is never going to die. But even more importantly, that at some point it's okay for you to rewrite the narrative of how you're going to spend Valentine's Day. Let's say that this year it's going to be really hard. That's okay. You don't have to do anything. If you just need to navigate the day to get through it, that's okay as well. Um, but if there's an opportunity to go to a place that you and your husband used to go to just so you could feel his presence, that's okay. If it feels good for you or okay for you to go to his resting place and say hi on that day, like I did with Zoe and her older sister, it's okay. If you choose to go out with some friends, that's okay too. There's no one right way to navigate this day except for the one way that works for you. And there's no obligation to anybody else except for you. Meaning that however you decide to go through that day, it's up to you. And as time does go by and you navigate this journey, I hope that there are Valentine's days where it is just it's actually a beautiful reminder of the relationship you had with your husband. And maybe you can do something in honor of him on Wednesday. And I'm so sorry that your anniversary kind of fall when you first met him falls on that day, because there's such significance to that, because it is the day of love, right? And so please know that because his physical presence isn't here, deep down you feel that love inside of you, and that's never going to go away. And so in what ways can you honor him? And again, honoring him doesn't mean you have to go out and do anything. It just means that even if you can spend some time with family, friends, or even get yourself through that day, it's okay. And you're honoring him by every minute, hour, and day that goes by. And so I hope that's helpful. But maybe sometime in the future, there'll be an opportunity to do something different on Valentine's Day that really brings a lot of fulfillment to you, that you're doing something for him on that day. That's wonderful. So, and by the way, navigating the day is absolutely fine. So I hope that helps some. So yes, yeah, 9 months ago. It's not that long. It's very fresh, and because it's fresh, it's a first, and because it's a first, it hurts a lot. And you're not alone here. And so again, I hope that helps some. So the next question I have here is from Diane, and this is her first Valentine's Day with her husband and the love of 40 years. And we were kids when we met, and now I'm alone and feeling old. We were married finally for 25 years. And so, um, yeah, I. How long ago was this, Diane? I'm just curious that you lost your husband. I'm so sorry. I'm just reading your other post here. I just don't really want to see couples together. Oh, you know what? You're absolutely right on that. And sorry to sound so brash with that, but I remember a few months after I lost Zoe, and I would see a dad with his two daughters, and I would almost get mad because I'd be like, he better be nice to them. He better be everything to these girls because they look up to him. And I understand that feeling of being very angry, or at least that you just don't want to see other couples together, because it feels lonely. You feel like there's a big piece of you, a big chunk of your heart that's been ripped out. And I can say that now, again, that was very early on. And I'm thinking back to that time very shortly after I lost Zoe. That's why I'm feeling it emotionally now, because I remember how I was that early on. And now when I see a dad with his daughter, it actually brings a lot of love back into my heart and warmth back into my heart. And so this is still very fresh for you, Diane. And so um, I it doesn't make sense. There's so much that's unfair about all of this. It's unfair that other couples get to be happy, and here we are having to navigate this day without them, right? And so it just brings up a lot of emotions. Love is not limited in our lifetime. What other areas? So I'm going to ask you, Diane, what other areas of your life is there love that's present? And I'm not talking about intimate love necessarily. I'm just talking about all love. And I'm talking about family, friends. Like, what other areas of your life, where other in other areas of your life is love present, where you're feeling a really deep connection to someone, friends, family, or otherwise? Because I think it's not. I will never say to anybody, we got to be grateful for what we've got. That for the people that are still here, because that's not cool either. What I mean by this is that love is abundant. It's always around us. And it doesn't replace the fact that your husband is no longer here, but it gives us an opportunity to remind ourselves that love exists everywhere around us all of the time. And it doesn't matter if we've lost a husband, it doesn't matter if we've lost a wife, it doesn't matter if we've lost a child, it doesn't matter if we lost a parent, that love is always going to be around. And again, with the grief, it may be really hard for us to feel that love because it's buried under the layers of the grief. Um, and I think with time, time, by the way, is not a driver. It is a companion on our journey. And so we have an opportunity to be able to take some steps forward at our pace. There's nobody there's no agenda. Nobody else's agenda fits here. It's just what we need in order to navigate this time. So, again, I hope this helps, Diane. You're doing so well, knowing that, and I say this, I don't know you, of course, but to be able to take steps like this, to come in and actively ask questions, to be curious about what it takes to navigate grief, to get on the other side of the heavy grief. That's really powerful. That is an honoring of your loved one. For everybody in here, by the way, everybody that's in here, the fact that you're here and either you watch videos or you go on live streams or you read articles, you read books, you watch video, whatever it is, anything that you do in order to gain some understanding and find some meaning in your loss, you are honoring your loved one, because it takes courage to do all of that. Even if it was just one thing, it takes courage to do any of it. And so, one of the best ways that we can honor our loved one is to carry on. And it does show that we care, that love is unconditional, right? So, I know this isn't easy, Diane, but you're doing so very well by coming in here. Everybody is. And so thank you all for being here. So if you're just joining us, please put your name in the chat. Tell us where you're from and ask your questions. I'm talking about Valentine's Day and how to navigate it. So Diane, I hope that helps for you. So um, yeah, so Paula writes in here again, it's so hard for me to see a little baby of about 7 months. Absolutely. While I wouldn't wish the loss on anyone, it's hard to see all of those families and the happiness. So I'm going to thank you, Paula, for sharing that, because I want to come back around to my coworker who lost her daughter during childbirth. It took her about a year or two, and, you know, she's a doctor. And she goes, I couldn't stop this from happening. I didn't know what was going on. And I thought that my body was not possible. It was not possible for my body to produce children. And so she now has 3 kids, and she always remembers her daughter who didn't survive. And she doesn't have a family of 3, or in this case 5, with her and her husband. There's a family of 6. That child will always hold a special place in her heart. And so I'm hoping that your daughter, Paula, will try again, because I don't know, again, the situation and all of that, but I just hope that in her heart that she will want to try to have more children, and hopefully um, all of them will be healthy. So that's my wish for your family. So and so Liz writes here, I feel jealous of other parents enjoying their kids, and I don't get to be with my daughter. I feel like they got to keep their kids. Why couldn't I keep mine? And Liz, I remember, and thank you for being back here. I know that you were on the Christmas broadcasts and live streams, and I know this isn't easy. Like you, I've seen that. I'm not a video gamer of anything like that, but I was just watching a video. There's a TV show that came on a couple of years ago called The Last of Us. I don't know if you guys know that show. It's a show about zombies, and but back in 2013, they developed a video game, and the video game starts off with a father and a daughter, and very shortly after the zombie outbreak, his daughter gets killed by a soldier who's trying to manage it was an accident. And the thing is that this character in this video game reminded me of Zoe. Zoe used to dress just like her. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it brought back all these memories. And um, I felt for a video game character, I know it's a story, but I just could feel it again. And so, but here's the thing that has changed in the last 10 years, that I have found to be very powerful on this journey. And that is that I am still connected to all of Zoe's friends. Some of them are having kids now. Some of them are doing some incredible things with their lives. Some of them are just doing their day-to-day thing. They're still living the town where we lived. They're still doing their thing. It doesn't matter. But collectively, they all remind me of Zoe. And so I hate that Zoe's not here, but through them, and when I'm with them, and when I talk to them, I feel Zoe again, if that makes sense. So I'm so sorry that I know that the jealousy of other parents getting to have their kids and we can't keep ours. Here's what I would invite you to do on this, Liz, is that we operate based on the narrative that we tell ourselves every single day. If we say to ourselves, I am the most unlucky parent because I don't have my child here. And I'll be honest, I'll share something privately with you guys here that when I would say to myself, after I lost Zoe, that, she was 15 when she took her life. And I said to myself for a long time that I don't ever want to be a parent again, because I can't even raise the first kid to 18. I can't even raise a kid to get to adulthood. That was the narrative I was telling myself. I know that's not true, but it's a way for us to cope with the loss, where we feel bad, we feel guilty, we feel like we could have done more and something should have changed. And so I invite you, Liz, to sit down later on tonight with a piece of paper and think about some new narratives that you can tell yourself. And maybe I give you a couple of examples here. Maybe like for this first one, we say, I feel so jealous of other parents enjoying their kids, and I don't get to be with my daughter. That maybe it's something like, I really miss my daughter. I wish she were here. but unfortunately she's not. And so I uh, I wish that, or not wish, I would like to move through my day and feel the love of my daughter versus putting any energy into being jealous of other parents. It again, it's a just work with me on this one, Liz. It's like it's just one of those things where we have to rewrite the narrative. Nobody else is going to do that for us. The more we tell ourselves something internally, those thoughts become our beliefs. And then ultimately, those beliefs become something that gets rooted within us. Everything we believe right now came from a thought, and that thought said over and over again became our belief. And so, in this case, Liz, I just invite you to rewrite the narrative that you're telling yourself about, and everybody here, honestly, that, hey, I get it. I've been there too. I had to rewrite my narrative about the what I was saying about, myself as a parent. Um, and I'm not saying this to be arrogant, but I am Zoe's dad for other kids who are struggling. And I've had opportunities to connect with young adults who have lost their parents from the opposite perspective, right? And so one of Zoe's friends actually lost her dad just a couple years after Zoe died. And she was one of Zoe's very good friends. And so I'm still connected to this girl. Um, and I'm so happy that she has started to find a new path in her life. But we talked about the same thing about forming a new narrative, because the narrative she was telling herself was really keeping her stuck. And so anyway, Liz, I hope that helps some. Um, yeah, so let's see, friends, kids, but kids abroad, right? My church family have been amazing. I love that, Diane. Whatever works for you, your church family, fantastic. I mean, everybody has something hopefully that will work for them, where they feel connected, supported, and loved. And again, I'm going to go back to love, right? If you feel that connection, all that is love. And so, yes, I hope it helps some, Diane. Thank you so much as well. So, hey, Martin, welcome. What do you say to friends who say you're doing great when they don't see you the other 99% of the time when you're sad and you're grieving? Wow. Yeah. What a great question on that, Martin. You're doing great. Let's say, Martin, you're doing great. I mean, I don't know. I think part of us would be like, yeah, we're probably going to be nice about it. Internally, you're like, are you kidding me? Did this guy just say you're doing great? He has no idea what I'm doing. He has no idea, or she has no idea. When I go home, I break down into a puddle for the next 2 hours. And unfortunately, it's hard because we don't want to burden other people with our pain. And so that's why we tend to feel our emotions more deeply when we're by ourselves, because it's us. We know ourselves. We are our best advocates for ourselves, and it's not easy when we're trying to navigate this. And so we want to appear strong for people that are around us. We want to appear strong to those who are there with us. And but here's what I would say to that, Martin. Um, I would say, thank you so much for your care. I think deep down people are hoping that you're okay, but they don't have access to you that 99% of the time, so they really don't know. And so I think in this case, you don't owe them an excuse. You don't owe them a justification for how you're feeling, whether it's good, bad, or otherwise. And so I typically, what I do is I thank people for their care, and I leave it at that, because unless it's a very close family member or a very close friend that I trust implicitly, I'm not going to go any further than that. We do our best to navigate our grief. And when the time comes for us to be social again, whether that's at work or with social circles or friends or family, whatever it is, There's going to be certain aspects that's going to continue to emerge. Um, and look, it's been 10 years. I only have conversations about how I'm really feeling with Zoe's sister, Zoe's brother, Zoe's mom, my family, and that's it. Maybe a couple of good friends. But to everybody else, none of their business, because we're dealing with this. And I know we wish we could show people really how this feels, but not in a way to be mean to them, but just in a way that just kind of like, look, I'm really not feeling all that great. And if somebody that says, hey, you look great, or you're doing great, and you're like, yeah, I'm really not doing that great though, that could go either way. It could be, so tell me what's going on. What do you need from me right now? That's kind of a healthy way of saying it. Other times people are like, oh, okay. And they back away. So in this case, that's why I say it's like it's best to kind of have those conversations. If somebody says that, I thank them, I bless and release, and I carry on, and I reserve my deeper thoughts for how I'm really doing with my therapist, with my family, with my friends, and those that I trust implicitly. Everybody else doesn't get to see that part of me. So you guys do. Why? Because you get it, right? I share my feelings. I share how I'm feeling in my Facebook group. I share how I'm feeling in my videos. I share stories because you guys get it. And so I hope that helps some, Martin. So let's see here. Well, well, is there more? No. Okay. So yeah, good. I'm glad it helps some, Martin. So, you know, I really wish that we had a different outcome. This is not a club that anybody wants to be a part of. The newsletter, not great. Not gonna lie, it's not great. But I don't know, some things like this. I wish I had resources like this when I was going through my loss of Zoe. Maybe there were out there. I just did not pay attention to them. At that point, it really didn't. That's not what I needed. I wanted to be in front of somebody face to face and talking to them. I had a really good coworker. I was very lucky. I was working in an office building in Boston, and we shared an office. It was split in half, and the way that the desks were set up, it was like a cube in a way, but it wasn't. Like there wasn't a barrier between us, but there were two office spaces in this office, and I think that I needed. I didn't know him that well. He started a couple of months after Zoe died, and sorry, a couple months before Zoe died, and I didn't know him that much beforehand. But when I came back to work, he'd be cranking away, working on some spreadsheets for the product that he was building and managing. And I'd just be sitting at my desk, just in a fog, right? I couldn't think straight. And I would just say, this is really weird. This whole process is just weird. That's all I could think of. That's all I could think of, but I didn't have any filters. And every single time, his name was Joe. And every single time that I did that, Joe always was working. He stopped and he turned and he would just listen. Didn't matter what I said. Didn't matter if I got upset. Joe listened. That is one of the best things that somebody can do for you right now, is just listen, not try to fix it. Joe didn't try to fix anything. He didn't say, well, why don't you try this? Why don't you try that? He didn't try to get out of the conversation. I was so deeply grateful for that. That, by the way, was a first. I don't think there was anybody in my life up to that point that ever had done that much listening. So this dude is an excellent listener. And so if you can think of family and friends, anybody in your life, and it might take a little time to think about this, but somebody who is just an excellent listener. They don't try to fix anything. They don't try to take the pain away. Maybe they even ask you, hey, do you want me to try to help you with this, or do you want me to listen? And maybe for you, if you're on this call and you're struggling with your loss, to say to them, hey, you know what? I just need somebody to listen right now because I've got some things on my mind. I didn't have to say that to Joe. It was just implied. Um, but Joe, again, he was just an excellent listener, and it really helped me navigate those moments when it would just like I'd actually be working on something, and it just would be like the memory would come right back in of everything, and then and like you get that hot flash of just that remembering of the loss and the reality of it, and it hits you and it stops you in your tracks. Um, and it would just cause me to say to him, man, you know what really sucks? And I just go off for about maybe 5-10 minutes. Joe would listen, and and he would probably say some things that were very helpful at the time, like, "Hey, I'm sorry that really hurts. I'm sorry that really hurts." Um, and I'm like, "Yeah, man, it's like it sucks. That's like I can't explain it." But I also didn't want to overtake his time either. Like that was very generous of him to do that. And so I think what I would wind up doing most of the time is that I would kind of ramble on for a few minutes, just a few minutes though, because anything more than that, it wasn't fair to Joe either. But I'm kind of going back to what Martin was talking about as well. It's got to go both ways. That yes, the people that are there that will listen to you, if and you know, if it's a good friend and if you're at your home and they ask the question, what do how are you doing? And you're like, can I share with you how I'm feeling right now, good, bad, or otherwise? And they're like, yes, go. And they just let you. It feels good to be able to have that type of connection. And if you don't have that connection right now with somebody, then maybe the next best thing is to get connected to people that are in an online support group, because again, we get it. We've been here or we're there and we're navigating it. We're trying to figure it out. And others who are in here can resonate with everything that you say. And then that actually helps in the healing in many ways. So yeah, if you're coming in here, by the way, if you're new to the chat, new to the session, please tell me your name and where you're calling in from, and ask away. A lot of us that are in here, this is either our first holiday or first Valentine's Day without our loved one, or this is my 10th Valentine's Day without Zoe. First couple were tough. But and again, I know that it's not going to be easy on Wednesday. But I've got different plans this year. I'm going to do something that's going to honor Zoe this year. I don't know what that is just yet, but I'm pretty excited. You know what? Actually, I figured it out. Here's what I'm going to do. On Wednesday, I'm going to go to the beach. Zoe loved the beach. I'm going to go, even though I'm living down here in Florida, I'm going to go to the beach and I'm going to collect some shells. And when I get home from the beach, and I'm going to bring those shells, and I'm just going to share that experience with Zoe. And I'm going to share, and when I'm at the beach, I'm going to be present at the beach, because I know she'll be there with me, and I'll feel her presence, and it'll feel really strong. So, let's see here. Martin writes, I'm stressing over the fact that I need to have my husband's ashes put into the ocean. They're here with me at home, and the thought of doing this fills me with dread. I guess that's normal. Yeah, it is. It is, Martin. I mean, here's the thing. Even though it's your husband's ashes, in a way, it feels like if you're going to put the ashes in the ocean, that you are somehow going to push him away from your life. Right? The ashes are going to float away, and that'll be the end. I won't have anything to remind me of him. And I'd like to gently challenge you on that, if that's what you're feeling. I understand the dread. I get that. If you can tell me in the chat, tell me a little bit more about the dread, what it is that you're feeling. Is it that you'll be missing him more? Is it that you feel like you're tossing him away from your life? Does it feel like you're letting him go? I'd love for you to tell me a little bit more. But it is normal to feel that, by the way, because it's I so there's a couple of things that around ashes, and sorry, I'm not laughing at you. I'm just thinking back here. So, um, when I was 18 or 19, we had a German Shepherd that lived to be 16 years old, and my mom, unfortunately, the dog fell off the deck during the middle of the winter, and she shattered her shoulder. We had to put her down, and but that dog was everything to my mom, and she really loved that dog, and she missed that dog terribly. And but she kept the dog's ashes in a canister, a can, um, and she's done that with all of the pets that she's had. And I have my dog Bean's ashes in a box, and I know what I want to do with those ashes, but I'm like you, Martin. I'm kind of dreading it. I I want to scatter her ashes at a specific cove up in Maine where I lived and where Bean was with me. And I'm going to be doing that later on this year. Um, my time with Bean was while she was here. That the box of ashes is um, it's it's a part of her, but what's in my heart is always going to be there. So when you go, when it's time, Martin, and by the way, there is no timeline but your own for this. When it's time for you to uh, put your husband's ashes into the ocean, go at your own pace. And I have a friend of mine who actually keeps his buddy's ashes in a little necklace. So maybe there's an opportunity to put some of those. Yes, like you said, I have a locket, the shape of an angel, a small amount of husband's ashes that'll always have some. That's great. Your husband's everywhere. He's part of the ground. He's part of the air. He's part of the water. So it doesn't matter where you are. Um, I believe that our loved ones are always around us no matter what. And so, um, I remember, by the way, it was probably about 5 years ago, I moved from Massachusetts to Maine with Bean and my dog. And um, I remember when I moved in, I was really having a hard time because I was missing Zoe and I felt like I was leaving her behind because I just sold the house that we lived in for like she lived in it for 6 years and I lived in it for 5 more years after she died. And when I sold it, I was really scared and all that. And so I would wake up in the morning and think, I'm so sorry, Zoe. I miss you so much. I'm so sorry for selling the house. And I felt really guilty. It got so bad that when I woke up in the morning, the first when I opened my eyes, I was crying again as if it was the very first time. Like the grief was fresh. And this was 5 years later, 6 years later. And so 5 years. And so I called a friend who always had a really unique way of describing things to me. And I shared that with her that I was struggling with this. And she's like, Eric, this is good in a way because it's actually bringing up aspects of your grief that I haven't dealt with yet. And I'm like, okay. So she asked me, Eric, what would it mean to let Zoe go? Oh, she asked me. I got so mad. What do you mean let her go? What does that even mean? She's like, no, 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 no. Work with me here. What does that mean to you to let Zoe go? Now, anybody that's on this call, if you're hearing that, you know how it feels. It makes you angry. It makes you sad. I felt a lot of anger because I'm like I can't. What do you mean let her go? I can't let her go. She's but I knew how it felt. And the reason that I got so wound up about it when she asked me was because I know I was going to be feeling the pain. And so I responded to her when I could pull myself together because it caused me to cry. And I said, it's going to feel like there's a gap there. And she said, Eric, man, I know you can hear this, but the gap already exists. I'm like, oh, what? Like the reality of her saying that really hit hard. And she said, but what is it that you can be doing to fill your space, fill that gap. And I said, well, I hopefully, I'd like to be helping other people who are struggling with grief. That makes me feel like I'm honoring Zoe. Um, I can really look forward to where I'm living here in Maine now because it's where I've always wanted to live when I was growing up. She's like, okay. And I said a few more things, and she's like, Eric, that's it. That's exactly how you fill the gap. She said, you were never, ever going to stop loving Zoe. You're not going to let go of her like that. However, you can let go of the pain because it's no longer serving you. And you don't need to hold on to that pain. And I tell you guys, when she shared that with me, that was like a boo. The light went on, the skies opened up, and I just felt like this weight coming off my shoulders. And so for you, Martin, when it comes time for you to release your husband's ashes into the ocean, you are never going to let go of the love you have for him. You will let go of the pain. And that's okay to do that. So I hope that helps some. I really appreciate everybody being on tonight. I know any holiday isn't easy, and obviously this one has to do with love, Valentine's Day. And I know you're missing your loved one, whether it's a spouse or your child or even a parent. And if you're watching this after the live stream, I invite you to put your questions into the comments because I'd love to answer those questions for you as well. I pay attention to all the comments that come in on any video that I do because I know that some people can't make it here tonight and they just want to get through the holiday, but they maybe got questions afterwards. And so I hope this helps some tonight for you. I wish that I could take all of your pain away. I can't, unfortunately, but I can tell you that there are better days ahead for you, no matter where you are on this journey, whether it's day 1 or day 1000. There are better days ahead for you. And every single second, minute, and hour that that you navigate this, it takes courage. And that courage is just unconditional love for your loved one. And so be proud of that because that's huge. Imagine if you didn't care about your loved one. You wouldn't even bat an eye. This wouldn't be a thing. But we do, and it matters, and you're here, and you're doing something about it, and that means something. And it hopefully will mean a lot to you. So I want to thank you all for coming in tonight, asking such wonderful questions. I hope it was helpful. And I look forward to, I'm going to try to do these once a month, by the way. Why? Because I feel like it doesn't matter if it's a holiday necessarily, but just coming in and having these conversations and answering these questions, it's the way I can honor Zoe, right? It's what I said to that person who I talked to that day. Because I feel like I'm honoring Zoe's life by helping you to get back to your life too. So, as always, guys, I hope this helps, and I hope you have a decent Valentine's Day. Just go easy, do as much as you can. You're not obligated to do anything, and just remember that love never dies. Okay, guys, we'll talk soon.